How
Hey,
you doing? I'm Dave Bellew, that is. New York, or formerly from New York.
I am Gigi Robinson. I'm also from New York.
Oh,
So we got New
awesome.
York in the house.
New York is in the house. So how you doing today, Gigi? How you
I'm
feeling?
doing fabulous, and I feel even better now that I'm here with you.
Oh my God, I'm flattered. Flattery. Let's get to it.
Yeah.
Well, let's see, where do we start here? How about we just start, like, what inspires you? What do you jump out to? Tell me a little bit about yourself.
Oh, two very different questions. What inspires me? I think sometimes adversity inspires me because it shows resilience, and that's a huge part of my journey, but I also want to inspire people that struggle to be resilient because that's at the core of advocacy. It's about being humble and presenting yourself with humility so that you can be resilient and help others be more resilient. So that's what inspires me. I also love plants and I love vegan food. So yeah, amazing things.
Okay, so we got advocacy, we got vegan food, and we got plants. So the two plant-based things stay together.
Oh yeah,
Okay,
they do.
We'll
Exactly.
keep those together. All right, that's good. That's awesome. It's good
Yeah.
to know. What brought you here? Like, what got you into mental health and wanting to be an advocate overall?
Well, mental health as a whole is something I've always been passionate about. I started going to therapy when I was in second grade, and being from New York City and also having a mom that works in mental health is something that inspired me to get into it. And it was always a place where I could just express myself freely without any judgment, and also get that toolbox of things that I needed to help me through any situation, middle school, high school, college, even real life. We experienced mean girls, and and that was something that I think really started my mental health journey. But on top of that is also my work in chronic health and mental illness. They kind of go hand in hand because of everything that's involved, with the doctor's visits to the judgment by friends to the family relationship stress, so on and so forth. So that's really the main reason why I started.
You're in the public eye. I kind of know what that feels like being in a band, so I kind of know the intricacies of bouncing back and forth. How does it make you feel? What's that like for you?
So I think my falling into the public eye was not necessarily planned. It was never something I wanted to do or aspired to get into. It just happened, and it happened as a result of giving back and presenting my humility to the other people that deal with what I deal with in terms of chronic illness and chronic health. So the second that I started sharing my story was literally the second that it became a real public thing that people were interested in, and that I also got that feedback of, oh my gosh, you deal with this. Thank you for talking about this. I really needed somebody to look up to, or what you talked about caused me to go and get a specific doctor, which gave me my diagnosis, which now is helping me on my journey with my chronic health, so I could take better care of my mental health, which was really wild for me to even understand what was happening.
Talk to me a little bit more how chronic illness connects with mental health in that kind of way, because that was intriguing to me just overall in general, and then overall something I know I deal with because I have chronic laryngitis, so it plays with my vocals, and as a performer that's something I'm constantly dealing with. And even when you're going in to check in on those things, one of the things is, how do you feel mentally? It's one of the boxes that's checked off on there, and it's like, oh, how is it making you feel? And sometimes, yeah, it is difficult to be in a room and I have to be the quiet one, or after shows I can't, depending on how hard I performed, I got to be on vocal rest, so I can't go speak to the fans, I can't go do those things. So kind of talk about the connection of that, where you have an issue where you have a chronic illness and it's affecting you not only physically but mentally at the same time.
The chronic illness I live with is Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, which is a connective tissue disorder, and it's invisible. And it's something that oftentimes was very off-putting to a lot of people, and especially in relationships, friendships, academic settings. People didn't understand, even medical settings, right? They didn't understand. So it was like, how do I also feel about that? I got my diagnosis at 10, which is very young, so I grew up with this. It's not a new thing, unfortunately, but what it has taught me is that you go into these doctor's offices, and again, at 10 years old, you have no real autonomy over what your care is, right? You can say, I don't want to do this, I don't want to do that, but your parents decide at the end of the day. So for me, I spent years and years just doing what my parents said, based on what the doctors told them. Also, as a kid, you're hearing that with your chronic health, and sometimes these doctors will say, okay, you need to lose weight and then you'll have less pain, right? Like, I've had that said to me for my chronic illness. And as a teenager, that also can trickle down into eating disorders and into also mental health. And because all three of these things are related, it was something that I didn't even see until I was in college, until I was 19, 20 years old.
Wow.
And so growing up with that, seeing that and experiencing it, having that lived experience is something that I now am able to articulate with this lens of advocacy, with this academic lens where I can go and say, look, here's what happened, here's how I dealt with it, here's the actionable steps that you can take to actually put that in. So that's a little bit about how I got started in it, but also even something like taking medicine. There's a huge, huge stigma around that is in the public eye. So not only was I living with a mind over matter mentality for years, ignoring my pain and exacerbating my condition, I was also mentally telling myself, you can't get the care that you need because of what everyone else is telling you. And medical situations, chronic health situations, are so specific to the individual and what their care needs to be, that's like a very messed up mentality to take. So it was literally so much at once. And going through that experience and not having the words to even explain what's happening was so hard. And I also think it was years and years of buildup, of not knowing what to say to these doctors, not acknowledging that I needed help, right? And so finally I decided, okay, Gigi, we're gonna do this. We're gonna show, don't tell. We're gonna use photography. We're gonna use video. And we're gonna show people what it's like to be a chronically ill patient. And from there, that's what kickstarted all of the influencer stuff.
And that's a really cool perspective, because from lived experience is something that I think gets underplayed.
Yeah.
You get the clinical experience, and it's funny, I just did a talk about that with a lot of psychiatrists, and just like, lived experience is huge. Being able to hear the patient, what their needs, what are they feeling, or the patient themselves,
right,
being able to describe and speak about their experiences and fully understand that. And I think lived experience touches people a lot more than clinical experiences. So
yeah,
you just speaking about it, lighting up me, I'm over here like, oh yeah, I get that. I know what that feels like. I understand that. And I think that's what your audience does.
Yeah.
In a nutshell, like realistically, and I know you got this huge social media following. This social media is booming for you. And social media can be a toxic space. Mm-hmm. It's a space that can go up and down. It can go all over the place. So, what are you doing in that space? A part of your advocacy to kind of like battle not only just the stigmas that come along with it, but also to speak about it openly, honestly, and safely.
Yeah. So I'm going to start with the safe aspect of it, because it's what I really think I am good at doing. And I've been fortunate enough to not be, canceled, and I don't think anybody should be canceled. I'm team cancel culture, but hold people accountable, right?
You.
So that is number one. But number two is these platforms are getting so smart to the point where you can actually add a filter to filter out certain words. So anything about body image that's negative, we all know what we're talking about, those nasty words. Those are the things that I filter out across all of the platforms, so I don't even see the comments that come in if they're about that. I don't see anything that's so negative. And if there is something negative, it's an immediate block. Like, I have someone helping me out on my team, which is like really lucky, who also sees everything. I just say, hey, look, I don't want to see it. If you see something bad, delete, gone, bye. And that's something that I don't let enter my kind of periphery ever, because I think also everything we see online, we can internalize, and we think that we know people personally, but we don't. We don't.
At all.
No matter how long you stared at my social media or researched me, you don't know me until we're sitting right here face to face.
You're seeing everyone's highlight reel. That's really what you're
are.
seeing. And it goes to what you were saying about
Right.
actually knowing someone, because you're not. You're actually getting whatever version they're deciding to project to you. So
Right.
you don't really fully know that person.
Right, and that leads me to my second point, which is the fact that because you don't know somebody, how and why would you compare yourself? Why would you do that? You're saying, okay, I want to be like them, and you're forgetting about you. And in a selfish way, you have to put you first, and not in a like egotistical way. No. We're checking our ego at the door here. We're saying, okay, somebody else can do something, and I can also coexist and do something awesome as well. Like
Yes.
everybody has their own path that's going in all crazy lines and everything like that. It's not something where you should ever let somebody else's opinion of you affect how you feel. And I know that's way easier said than done, because hate online is disgusting. I don't like it at all. I think it's really disturbing also that there's people out there that are so hurt that they feel the need to project their insecurity onto a random stranger on the internet, just because of a small snippet of something, right? So I think we need to take things less personally instead of like very personally. And that's something else that helps me online.
You've said so many great points about that, because overall, social media is just a difficult thing to navigate. I try to not be on it at all, as we were talking about before we jumped on.
Yeah.
It was like, it's such a, and being a person in a band, you get these comments. When you were talking about the comments, that kind of hit me. Like, you get these
Sorry.
comments and you're like, oh, and I'm always like, nope, don't want to see the comments, don't care. I'll tell everyone else,
Yep.
you guys answer the comments. I'm not gonna look, because I know myself, and I tend to like take online things
Internalize
personally.
it.
I internalize
Yeah.
it nonstop, and so I try to not do that as much anymore.
Well, the other thing that's interesting about that is when you are a public figure, you're making content for people, and that's your career. You're making content basically waiting on seeing how the audience is going to like it. It's the same thing with music, right?
Yep.
You're turning out music and you're like, is my audience gonna like this? What are they gonna think of the next song, the next album, how I perform tonight, right? It's the same with social media. Are they gonna like this content? Sometimes I fear talking about things that are fun, like for example, fashion. I grew up in New York City. Come on, like we gotta like fashion, right?
Exactly.
So me talking about fashion when I'm a mental health and chronic illness advocate on my platform kind of has people going, well, Gigi, why are you not talking about that anymore? Or like, I'm like, hey, I'm a person, like I have multiple different needs, I'm multifaceted. And I think that a lot of times when people do internalize and take things personally, they forget like, okay, this is an actual person. It's not just them showing up online for me to make content for my enjoyment, right?
Exactly.
They're a person that has needs, that has feelings, that has so much going on in their world that they probably don't even share. And I think that that's another thing to keep in mind.
Let's talk a little about therapy. What
I
is
love
what is
therapy.
what does therapy mean to you? And what's your experiences with therapy?
Well, I am like a huge therapy advocate. I've been to a bunch of different therapists over the years, and I've actually gotten pretty lucky in liking my therapist on the first try, which I think is one of the things that people are the most scared about when going to find a therapist, is like, are we gonna have this chemistry where like you get me, I get you, we vibe? And that's so important. So I've just gotten lucky in a weird way, but I also kind of tolerate a lot. So maybe, I don't know, some of the situations I could have like, you know, looked over and looked into a bit more to be like, okay, this might not be the best fit, but like it works for now, right? So I started therapy when I was in second grade, like I mentioned, and this was actually before my chronic illness like really even started. This was because I was dealing with mean girls and people bullying in elementary school. Literally, like I was a child, right? And that was something that I don't even know if people really knew what therapy was. Like I would always say, oh, okay, I'm going out to an appointment, or I'm going to meet my mom for lunch. Like it was something that I actually had guilt about at first and shame around. Like things
Where it
were
wasn't-
different.
yeah. Oh, of course, because now mental health in general has become a buzzword. It's become this thing where and it's kind of like a double-edged sword in some
It
kind of
is.
ways, because it's amazing that so many more people feel like they can speak out, and so many people feel like they're comfortable. You can say, hey, I'm going to therapy, and won't get this weird look.
Yeah.
Everyone's kind of like...
Everyone's like, yes,
Exactly, yes,
therapy.
therapy, yes. There's this big hoorah moment, but then there's also those moments where, hey, maybe it's being overused, or maybe these things are happening, and it's just like,
Right.
wait a minute, let's keep things
Yeah.
in frame. But let's get back to your therapy experience.
Yeah.
How did it feel going to therapy at such a young age? Did you feel like you fully understood what was happening?
No.
No, not at
No.
all?
It was just like a friend. It was someone I could talk to, right? That's the whole thing. Go talk to someone, right? And I think that's all it had to be at the time. I was okay. Like I knew it was therapy. My parents knew it was therapy, clearly. They're the ones that put me there in the first place. But it was really a place where I could talk about the stuff and my feelings. It was getting comfortable with the idea of feeling. And I think in the world we live in today, with so much digital connection, we lose that feeling. And that's what's, I think, the difference in going to therapy now is returning to that root of addressing how you feel when somebody says something to you,
Yeah.
or when they do something that causes you to react a certain way, right? Another thing about therapy that I loved, which like I mentioned before, I would always hide it. And I would always feel this shame around it. But again, over the past 5-ish years, people have become a lot more comfortable with the concept of therapy, with going to it. I think everybody almost except our boomer parents, right? Because even so, sometimes I'm like, why don't you guys go to therapy? And it's like, oh, we don't want to, or like, we don't need it. We're so strong, mind over matter. And that's the generational difference where I think Gen Z and millennial are like, we actually need this to heal, address our feelings, address our emotions, and then also take that and take implied action, right? Use everything you learn and talk about in therapy and use it in your work. Talk to your friends in different ways, address them, address situations differently, see how you can handle them with like grace, right?
Parents grew up in a world where it wasn't acceptable. Our parents grew up in a world piled with stigma. So that's why they have those reactions, those responses, kind of like, oh, therapy, no way. I remember the first time telling my mom I was going to therapy. She was like, why? You're the smartest, strongest person I know.
Right.
And I'm like, but I need the help. My mom's in the medical field. Like she fully understands, but also thought that, hey, you can push through it. That was a stigma that was always there. So when we're talking about stigmas, what do you feel like your work has done to destigmify and help others in the spaces that you have?
Oh, that is such a great question. And I think, like you just mentioned before, now therapy and mental health advocacy can sometimes be used as a buzzword for clout, right? In the social media industry.
You see it, hashtag mental health.
Yeah, and it's not something that I think anybody should ever criticize, because usually anyone talking about it is being vulnerable in a way. They're opening up. Maybe talking about it online is all they have. Maybe they can't afford therapy. Maybe they've seen an influencer do it and it empowers them to talk about something they otherwise wouldn't, and therefore it causes that ripple effect across communities. So I think that is a really important concept, and I never bash anybody for, talking about mental health in whatever way they're capable of at the time. And I think that's the key thing that a lot of people miss. It's like what I mentioned earlier. I talk about mental health and chronic illness online. If I talk about fashion, it's weird. The same way if somebody in fashion or a TikTok dancer or whatever it may be, if they all of a sudden talk about mental health, it's like, well, why? Where's the connection? Like, have you opened up about this before? And then how's the audience gonna perceive it? So I think it's kind of, like you said, a double-edged sword, but the specific advocacy that I talk about relates back to my chronic illness and addressing the fact that there's so many issues for patients when they walk in the door and they're dismissed because you can't tell that they're sick. The same thing with mental health, right? You could have so much anxiety, you could have depression, you could have OCD, you could have any number of mental illnesses, and people might not be able to even know that you're struggling because you don't look sick. Chronic illness is the exact same thing. And that is the intersection that I really talk about.
That's really cool, because I never thought about it. Even for me right now, I'm learning, and I never thought about it in that kind of a way, because even for myself, like I'm a musician, things are going well, we're doing great, and people don't realize there's things like post-tour depression, where I suffer from that a lot, where you spend months and months waving on these highs, these highs, like life is amazing. Every night people are screaming your name, taking photos, and then you come home, and what I like to call, you come home into the darkness, and now you start to listen to these voices and you start to hear these things, and it's like separating that and understanding where those spaces come from, and that it's okay. One of my biggest things that I believe that's helped a lot, and I believe that it projects off of you when you speak, and I love that, that it's okay. No bashing anything, no stigmatizing anything. It's fine. And I think online, as influencers, especially as you, because you're a big influencer online, I love the fact that you're there projecting that everything is okay. You even touched on, like earlier, cancel culture. I'm not a big fan. I think accountability is a better word. And also I'm really huge on redemption. We're human. We all make mistakes, and I think we built a culture online that kind of pushes that so far away that you can't redeem yourself from a mistake. And I think we should, and I think that will help everyone's mental health. Like it's like, I'm blown away a little bit by your work. And how you go about it. You project a certain level. You project a certain level of energy that I think is needed in the space, especially on social media.
Thank you.
It's just because it's such the wild, wild west on social media.
It is.
It
but
really is.
We're emerging into this phase of also this new wave of the creator economy, the creator industry. That means there's going to be that many more people either jumping on the bandwagon or adding to like all of the chaos that's already happening. And I think if we have more conversations like this, where we're sitting down with people that are actually in the field, talking to them about how they're doing, how they block out all the noise, as they say, how you block out the noise as a musician, right? Yep. How can we collectively, also as people in entertainment, deal with this? And then how can we help people who work more corporate jobs, right? Let's not forget about corporate America, because that is a problem in and of itself. And I think when you train younger kids, college, high school, middle schoolers, to talk about how they're doing in any given moment, you empower them to not talk about it from a place of shame, not talk about it from a place of like, I want mental health resources. It's, I need mental health resources so that I can perform my best for you. Exactly. You're paying me to do a job for you. I need you to also play your part. Right?
Exactly.
And that's what I think this discussion about chronic health and accommodations and mental health accommodations, that's where they go hand in hand, and that's where my work coincides.
It's when you touch on the chronic illness aspect of everything, I think that that goes far past where most people even think about mental health. And I love that, and I think that should be pushed forward a lot more. That's a perspective literally I didn't have until you brought it up just now. I never thought how the two connect with each other, because I separate them, and we kind of compartmentalize things, and we put things in boxes to try to cope and deal and figure things out. So it's like, what's rightfully to my mind right now are the times where I was going through some kind of illness, or the times I was dealing with something, and how it made me feel mentally. Yeah. And how they go, and even my mom through cancer. My mom had cancer, and when she was going through her chemo, I realized it was how she felt about herself that helped her more than the medicine itself. Yeah. And it was just, and she said that to me. She's been cancer-free now for 10 years, which is amazing. It's been awesome. And just seeing that, so when you think of a chronic illness in that face, and I watched her not be who she was. And then one day she woke up and was like, I just still have to love myself, and I have to be okay with this, and I'm going to be okay. Right. And I think young adults, everyone should have the opportunity to be able to just understand themselves and speak freely about all of this stuff. I think it could be wide open. How was your experience with mental health throughout the pandemic? What did you do to keep yourself balanced through it all?
So there was a lot that happened for me during the pandemic, including the launch of my career, including graduating from college, including starting a master's degree, including starting my business. Like, there's a lot that happened. The best thing that I think really happened for me was the fact that I actually came home from Los Angeles, and I moved back home across the country. I came home with 2 suitcases. The rest of my stuff I donated, just like that's what had to happen in 2020. And I basically just didn't give myself the option to let this pandemic be something that was going to deter me from doing what I want, which was advocating for people.
It's amazing.
And prior to the pandemic, I actually was dealing with a lot of pushback in the academic setting that I was in about my chronic illness and about the way that I spoke about it and my struggle in general. So I, again, had no other choice but to show, don't tell. Like, I was an art student, so hear me out when I'm saying that and giving that analogy. Yep. But I couldn't necessarily I didn't have it in me to go to the dean or to go to higher up and say, this teacher is treating me a certain way, and I believe full-heartedly that this is ableism. They're not allowing me to talk about my chronic illness right now because I've already done it. You would never say that to any other kind of student. You would say, okay, let's nurture the thing you're good at. Let's nurture the thing you want to make your career when you graduate in 6 months, right? Not, oh no, you can't do that. So I took that experience, and I felt really, again, humbled to be in this position where I couldn't make deadlines. I was in the doctor's office. I was burnt out. I was having panic attacks going to class. And I finally went to one of my teachers, and I just was like, look, I can't do this at all. Like, I'm really struggling. And he said, well, bring your camera with you to the doctor. And I was like, wait, that's a great idea. Let me actually document in a photojournalistic way my life as a chronically ill patient going in these hospitals. My vision for that project ended up being, you know, the sound that crinkly paper makes when you sit on the bed, or you know, when you lie down and you look up and there's that fluorescent light, and then there's that like weird tile that's on the ceiling, right? That's a feeling that everybody, for the most part, knows. So I thought, can I really evoke this with a photo? And the answer was yes, which is great. And I'm so happy I did that. But that sparked my initial, I think, intuition into the advocacy space. And after that, I get sent home. I lose my job at Warner Bros. I, had to figure out what to do. So I started posting about, again, what I'm good at talking about now, what I can articulate myself about in my struggle, to share it with the world on social media. And the rest is kind of history. But in terms of mental health, it was so hard being home alone because of my chronic illness. I was immunocompromised. I spent a year and a half inside. The only time I went outside was to walk my dog.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, like and go to the park, here and there. But I was very, very isolated. And that was very challenging. I lost some friends. That's something that's really also challenging. But I think the biggest thing that I felt was that I lost myself a little because I didn't have that social interaction that I crave. I feed off of other people's energy, and I really, really wanted to be able to have conversations like the one we're having now, sitting across the table from one another, talking about things that matter. And I didn't have that, so again, I took to social media to start expressing that. And in doing so much, I was distracting myself from how I was feeling. So I would go to my doctor for chronic pain, and that was actually something that I really was excited about because it was a new doctor, which can be very scary, especially for chronically ill people. It's like, oh, another doctor, they're not gonna listen. But you know what? What if it does work out? What if they're the doctor that actually helps you get the care that you need? So I worked with her for about 8 months before we got to point C. I would say we went point A, point A1, A2, B, B1, B2. We got to C. And point C was the thing that actually worked for me. And it was a combination of therapy, physical activity. So I also was doing water aerobics, which is like, okay, what? I thought that was for old people, but no, water aerobics is so fun.
And it's actually really difficult.
It's difficult.
It's really, as a pretty fit person, I did some water aerobics, and there was some things I couldn't do.
It's so fun.
I'm not strong enough to do this.
Yeah, but like, that's the other thing that's cool about water aerobics. Usually you're with older people who aren't judging you. Anyway, that, and then physical therapy, and then the actual doctor's appointments, the, working on my relationship with food, working on my relationship with stress, understanding that you don't need to always be doing, understanding that you can shut your phone off at 10 p.m., 8 p.m. maybe, yeah. Maybe earlier, later, right? Like not being so addicted to it. And in doing that, I think that's something that kickstarted my journey with really also healing and making me be a better advocate so that I can help the people that are really in the thick of it right now.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
I try to tell people when we speak about therapy is like, it's not a one-size-fit-all thing, and it's also not a thing that sometimes happens quickly, but I love your don't give up mentality about it, because it's simultaneous in that space. Well, this therapist might not be for you. It's okay. If it doesn't work out, guess what? Who knows? The next one will work out, or the next one after that. The thing is, it's a journey. It's like one of my managers like to always say, it's a marathon, not a sprint.
Yeah,
take your time with these things, and this is your life. And be nice to yourself. Be kind to yourself. That's one of my favorite things. We actually have a piece of merch shirt that says, just be kind to yourself.
But yeah, that's like so important. And I think when you're struggling, they always say hurt people. And when you're in a position in this mindset of nothing's gonna work out, it hasn't worked yet, it won't, you never know what the next thing that's gonna happen will do for you. You never know if you just throw it out there, what's gonna happen. The other thing that I think is so important when you do have this journey of going to multiple therapists, multiple psychiatrists, multiple doctors, whoever they might be, is you now have another experience to advocate for yourself better. You have it in you now to say, you know what, I really appreciate you. I don't know if this is gonna work out. Or you know what, if I'm your patient, here's what I need, right? You can come to them with that. And over time, it'll become easier and easier. And also with the help of like a medical catalog or a medical journal, I think those are super helpful, especially if you're chronically ill and you're struggling to write down, okay, this affected my stomach this day, or, I can have this relationship with my doctor and be candid. I could say, you know what, I actually don't want the fellow in the room, right?
Yeah.
You would never turn away a fellow. They say, oh, can my student come observe? You would never think to say no, But you know what? They ask you because it's an option.
Yeah, and
And
when
I
you
think
have
taking
options.
advantage of that and making sure that you're getting the care that you're paying for is of utmost importance.
Yeah, that's amazing. And even when you touched on a medical journal, how that mimics an actual journal, because
Yeah.
I journal a lot, and that helps so much. And I didn't think about that because I journal like, okay, this made me feel this way. So when it comes back, you kind of have a reason. You kind of have
Yeah.
this thing to look back to, and where you can kind of focus and get yourself out of this particular space that you're in. I think that's really, really cool. Once again, another connection that I didn't put together. And I think anyone watching this, and I'm hoping when they do, young adults watch it, that they just feel like, hey, these are tools. When you
Yeah.
want to talk about tools, what are some of the tools that you use outside of just journaling and other things that you just kind of do to get through your everyday, or even not even your everyday, when you're struggling, your highs, your lows, what are those tools?
So many, but I love first and foremost that you're talking about journaling, because in the grand scheme of media in general, we look at journaling and we say, oh, you don't want to write in that. You know why? Because your best friend's going to find it and they're going to read it, right? They're going to know your deepest, darkest secret, and you don't want that. But I think that that is so misconstrued. People journal to get their emotions out. Journaling can be therapeutic, cathartic. It can make you feel all of these things. It can also just be a place where it can be your manifesting place. It can be a place where you say, you know what? I'm writing down what I need to do so I can build a blueprint and get what I want later. And even if that's medical, right? You can write, here's my symptoms, okay, bring it to your PCP, primary care, for anyone who doesn't know. And after that, say, here's what I dealt with, can you help me get to my next doctor? So journaling is so important, fan favorite, I love it. On that note, I also started breathwork. I see this incredible breathwork teacher, and for those that don't know, that is like the philosophy and the methodology behind breathing, behind the connection from your mind to your body, and really spending time understanding that you can calm your neural pathways just through breathing, and you can snap yourself out of panic attacks. You can get yourself ready if you're going to talk on a stage. You can get yourself into any groove you really want through breathing. You can hype yourself up, you can calm yourself down, you can just simply be, right? Exactly. Our breath is the one thing that's constant. So really taking a deep dive, focusing on it, doing it every single day, and just focusing on, okay, 5 in, hold for 5, 5 out, hold for 5, repeat. Classic box breath. Very simple. Do 6 of those. I think that will take you a little over a minute. But basically, that's been something that has really connected me to my body. And it can also be a time where, because I'm focusing on only my breath, I'm not focusing on my thoughts, I'm canceling all the noise, I can see, okay, how does your hip feel today? How's your back feeling? How are you physically doing? And from there, again, I can figure out how to plan my day. Another thing I love, which I don't know if it's really in terms of self-care, but I love my coffee. Like, that is something that I like to drink while I'm journaling. And it's also something that I could do to connect with people, right? We can have a coffee chat, we can grab lunch, those things are important. I love swimming, water aerobics is amazing, going on walks with my dog, going to the park, all of those things are awesome. And yeah, I don't know. I think there's some other things. Again, I do go to therapy, seeing different therapists, and just talking about my week, talking about the things that stress me out, talking about traveling, because travel is another stressor that your body's in constant fight mode, right?
Oh, yeah, you're not
saying,
you're not thinking
you
about
can't
that at
get
all.
sick, you can't sit this certain way, you can't stretch your legs. Okay, how is that going to feel when you go to sleep later? You're probably going to be exhausted, right?
Yeah.
So when you're in that exhausted state, to be able to throw your phone face down, on your bedside table, grab a book, grab some Netflix, grab some tea, whatever, and just calm, breathe. Doing that is what really helped me. And I know it seems so simple. It's did that cure my chronic illness? No, but it made me aware to the point where I can be a better patient advocate for myself, and in turn, in my advocacy work for others.
That's really, really cool. Have you ever been in a situation where you're you need to help a friend struggling,
Yeah.
and you kind of see it? How do you go about that? How do you approach that?
This is a hard one because, I'm about to be 24, and I've been through all the high school, drama. I've been through people struggling, losing people in their life, gaining new people, heartbreaks, bad test scores, losing a job, you name it, we've seen it. And I think the number one thing is remembering to take yourself out of the situation. You're being there for your friend, but it's not about you. It's not about what you intend, right? It's about honoring their feelings and supporting them. So if a friend comes to you and says, hey, I'm really struggling, how can I help you? What do you want from me? How can I best support you right now? Do you want advice? Do you want me to just listen? Do you want to just vent? Do you want me to respond?
Yeah. Now let's talk about the friend that doesn't necessarily come to you.
That doesn't know that
you know, the one
trouble.
that you just kind of see, or the one that A, doesn't know they're having trouble, or B, us having trouble, but they're too afraid to be vocal about it.
Yeah.
I'm too afraid to really step out and expose themselves and be that vulnerable.
Right.
Because I'm big on vulnerability, but I got here. I used to be this huge introvert who would
I
go
used to
through
be
things
shy
and say nothing, and I would just deal with it on my own. So what do you do if you feel, or what would you say to someone, or what do you do if you feel someone needs help, and how would you approach that?
So if somebody needs help and I'm looking at it from a distance, a lot of times let's go out, let's do something fun. And while you're doing something fun, kind of just like, in a way, fishing a little bit, asking, what's going on? Like, how's school been? How is it? How are your parents? What's going on? Oh, and how are you? Like, not directly jumping from don't dive right in. Because if you dive right in, you put someone on the spot. There's some people that can handle that. Most people are very, I need the time to process, to talk about myself. So in asking about other things, not just their mental health, can kind of help aid that situation. And it also can give them a little bit of trust. Like, okay, yeah, you care about me, you care about the other people in my life, right? Which is true. As friends, we do naturally care about what's going on in our friends' lives. But I think making that space and also being like, oh, okay, well, if you need anything, you can always come to me, right? Making it like a non-judgmental thing and just being like, thank you for sharing. I appreciate you opening up and sharing that with me. That's something that also is learned, right?
Yep.
Sometimes we don't even hear our parents say that, right? It'll just be like, well, okay, what do you want for dinner? And that's, we can't hold our parents to that, right? They're still learning too. They're learning us as people.
What is your advice for people who are on TikTok and all of these different platforms, not only from the side of the influencer, but from the view of the person actually consuming the content, and also partnering with somebody on TikTok to speak about mental health in a very safe way? What are those guidelines?
There's a lot of pointers, and I want to call them pointers, not guidelines, because at the end of the day, I am not the platform, I'm only a creator. And I think that giving pointers is something that people who have these academic backgrounds, medically certified backgrounds, organization, nonprofit partners, where there actually are these step-by-step instructions for a certain kind of bump online, those things are really important for advocates specifically to look to, especially when working with people. So for my Spotify Live podcast, Everything You Need Is Within, I focus on highlighting different doctors who are also TikTok creators, which is so awesome. And part of that is because I want that real, true, authentic medical background to kind of have when we're talking about the weight of social media online. So while yes, talking about it on a personal level as an influencer is one thing, talking to somebody who studies it, whose work it is, who's certified and has a whole degree, that's really important. So I know not everybody has that access, right? How can you do that if you're just wanting to start an advocacy? I would say research, right? Probably don't want to hear that answer, but you have to kind of invest your time and do the research and know before you can articulate yourself on a situation, right? If you want to help others. So you can have that lived experience, as I know we talked about, or, I think having a lived experience and talking about it is one thing, but if you want to help others and you want to really be a thought leader in the industry, you have to take applied research and really integrate that into your content. And from there, you will be able to reach more people than just the people dealing with the exact same thing that you're dealing with. So somebody living with my chronic illness, for example, they're not going to relate to me only over the experience with a certain doctor or in a certain medical setting or living with the same illness, right? It's going to be the things that I took away from that, like, here's what you can ask, right? Here's what you can actually implement into your lifestyle to get better care. And then that's really where it comes from. And again, I look online, I read medical journals, stuff like that. And I know not everybody's going to do that. So how can you do that safely? I mean, Google Scholar, Boom. Like, let's be real. If you're at an accredited university, look up the databases that you have there. If you go to your library, even at school, and you go to the librarian, I know, very weird and niche, but like, go to the librarian and say, look, I need a resource on this specific chronic illness. I need a resource on social media. I need a resource on policy. How can I really integrate that into my content and highlight that? And that's really important. And then, as you know, we also mentioned, having these filters online in terms of keywords and blocking them is really important. But in terms of being a creator, I also think doing as much as you can with nonprofit partners that are educational mental health resources are key. Like, you can't really be an advocate fully until you partner with an organization that's doing it at a greater scale than you can, and you say, you know what, I'm gonna give up one little square on my damn page for this thing. One. All it takes is one, right? At first. And then you do more and more and more. But it was really interesting to me because I actually did a poll for research for my grad school class, and it was on the way that influencers partner with nonprofits. And the amount of people that wouldn't actually give that one square up, that one tile on their page up, for free? Oh my gosh. I mean, it was like, where is that human in all of us, right? We go down the street, we go out to coffee chats, we mentor people, right? That's free. Why is social media not the same? Especially if you're in the position to share your platform and elevate a mission, a cause that could help more people. That's my question that I always ask people. So if somebody's curious on how to get into advocacy, I would point the finger back at them and say, first of all, why do you want to do this? Second of all, do you know of an organization that you want to support and partner with? And if they can answer those two things, then I'm like, all right, let's go, let's rock and roll. If they don't, I say go do your homework, go research, and then let's talk.
Do you feel like there's just an over-reliance on getting advice and all these things on social media, and what's your take on that?
Yeah, I think, again, like, are you a consumer or are you a creator? That is the biggest question I think people are asking. I know a lot of studies have come out recently talking about how Gen Z and whatever generations after them really wants to be creators first. They don't want to have a full-time job. So there's no doubt that social media is here to stay. It's how can we manage our relationship with it that I think we really need to dive deep into, and also how is social media at the core on research levels affecting us cognitively, right? How can we implement social media literacy and really, really make sure that at the end of the day, we're protecting our mental health? So when you're online, when you're scrolling, sometimes it can be a toxic environment. Sometimes you are seeing people using those filters, even the Instagram story filters, the TikTok filters that add a beauty filter that make your lips bigger, that make your eyes brighter, they make your teeth whiter. Okay, but when you're doing that, you need to extricate yourself from the situation and say, whoa, 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 whoa. Here is something that is making me look like someone and something that is not attainable. Maybe in an AI Web3 environment, your avatar could look like that, but no, not in real life. That is not what we can ever look like because it's a filter on our face, right? You could do makeup to look exactly like an Instagram filter or a TikTok filter, and it won't translate in real life because you know what? It's not real at the end of the day. So my number one rule is no filters. I don't use filters, I don't retouch, those do not live on my pages at all, unless it's like one of those funny, like
goofy ones.
Animation ones, not one that's face altering or body altering, none of that. And I encourage and implore everybody to kind of take that stance. And if you are doing a filter, and if you've ever caught yourself saying, oh, I wish my lips were bigger because of that filter, oh, I wish my teeth were whiter, you're good as you are, honey. Like, you have bigger fish to fry than comparing yourself to an Instagram story filter. But the reality is so many young people and people my age, heck, I just said, I've done it. And I'm like fully about to be 24. Like, this is something that I have dealt with before, especially being an influencer, where you see even people like huge celebrities using them. You're like, if they could do it, why can't I? But then you do it and then you feel bad about yourself, right? So I think doing that whenever you can. But then we have to look even deeper and see, okay, when I'm scrolling, how am I feeling, right? When I'm scrolling, when I see somebody and I see something that triggers me, what's triggering me? Is it how somebody else looks, and am I comparing myself to that? Is it I'm scrolling and they have something I want that I think that I want, but I'm not sure how to get it and I'm not sure why I want it, right? Is it just like a clout thing? How can you really figure out what makes you tick? And in turn, what ticks you off? And if you can answer both of those two things, if you can scroll for 5 minutes and think, is this thing bothering me? Is that person not giving me good vibes? And like, I literally mean it on that level. Like, there's some posts that you see that you're just irked by. Hey, unfollow. It's nothing personal. It's what you got to do to maintain your mental health, right? You want your scrolling environment to be as concise and poignanted as possible, because the truth also is these algorithms are getting so smart to the point where you could say the word plant or engage with a photo of a plant, and the next day you'll see more in your feed about plants. So if an algorithm is doing that and you're seeing things that are making you upset, but you keep engaging with them, it's gonna give you more of that. And by proxy, it's going to hurt your mental health. So my rule of thumb is, okay, where am I at right now? How can I look and examine for a very short amount of time? And I do this quarterly. So every 3 months, I look at my feed, I look at who I'm following, I see what's ticking me off. I need to cut it. If it is, it's gone. Bye. I don't even think twice about it anymore, because you know what? Even with people, right? It's like, oh, what's gonna happen if Bob from high school sees I'm not following them? Guess what? Bob from high school probably doesn't care. And I just think we can't take things so personally. So yeah, that's another thing that I do. And yeah, just being a consumer online, it can be hard, it can be tricky, but as a creator, I don't consume as much as I create. And I create so that it can be consumed. So as a creator, how can I make content that's not going to affect people in a bad way, right? An example that I think is very top of mind, top of line are these, day in my life or what I eat in a day video kind of situations. And those are videos that hold a lot of weight to other people, because some people, again, can't take themselves out of the situation and say, that is what works for somebody else and not me. And that is a key, I think, point that everybody needs to really drill into their mindset of, I can't compare myself to something someone else is doing in real life, but also online, right? Sometimes I see people online and I'm like, I want to be like them. But then I'm like, wait, Gigi, pause. Like, you're doing so much, bestie. Like, you got to give yourself a round of applause. Like, there's no need to compare. Nobody is your competition. Like, you are your own competition. And I mean that not only in the sense of what you can accomplish, but what you can also become aware of. It's your awareness of how you're doing, and mentally and physically.
So we tend to express ourselves in a lot of different ways. Online, hey, we get to be behind this veil. You get to not be seen, and you can express yourself in positive ways or in toxic ways. What do you say to somebody who might be going through something and makes the decision that we all dread to express themselves in a non-positive way online?
Yeah, I think there's a huge difference between feeding into a toxic culture online and expressing something negative, right? So you could share something negative, your frustration, your anger with words, right? But something we have to remember is that nothing is ever going to go away on social media, right? It's always permanent. There's an archive to everything. Somebody's taken a screenshot. The bigger you get, the more screenshots of people there are, the more fan pages there can be, the more, tracking of what you're doing there is. So I think sometimes from the creator side, if somebody, sees something that makes them upset and they decide to make a nasty comment, it's like, okay, well, why are we doing that? Would you ever say that to my face? And if the answer is yes, then okay, maybe we got a problem. Like, let's dive deeper in. Are you okay? Right? Almost having sympathy for the people that are being negative, but not to the extent that it excuses their behavior. It's something that we have to hold people accountable for, and I don't know what the solution for that is yet. I think there's going to be more resources and more conversation around how to deal with trolls online, because they're called trolls for a reason, right? They're called, haters because they're online. They're not contributing anything to a positive environment. So
it can come from a myriad of things. It might be I'm hating, I might be a troll, I might be all these different things, but
may have rained.
The space online allows for that to be autonomous, that to be anonymous. You get to kind of, like I said, hide behind this veil of like, I can say this, there's no repercussions, you don't really know me, I really don't know you, I can close my keyboard, I can kind of walk away from it, but not thinking of, hey, whatever I just wrote can have a lasting effect on someone.
Yeah.
So what do you say to someone that, hey, who may be A, doing it, and then someone B, who's receiving it?
For the person doing it, would you say that to your brother, your sister, your niece, anyone younger than you? Would you say that to your grandma, your aunt, your mom, your dad, your caregiver? Would you? Right?
Oh, that's a good
like,
question for them.
think of me or anybody as an influencer, as somebody that you know, right? When you're doing that, you're doing it from this, oh, I don't really know you. But okay, let's flip it around. Let's say, okay, maybe you do know me, right? Would you actually behave this way if you did know me? And the answer is usually no. And the reason why they get away with it is because a lot of creators and influencers on the receiving side say, okay, it's just a hater, bye. And at the end of the day, we can delete the comments, we can censor the words. That doesn't necessarily mean that it doesn't affect us, because at the end of the day, it does. Like, there's a lot of stuff online. Like, one time I posted about this hair care product that people didn't like. Like, people just were like, I don't like this product. You're, being like a supporter of this product, and therefore, you suck. And I was like, you saw one video of me curling my hair with a product and you're mad? Honey, you have better things to do. So as a creator, that's my mindset. But in terms of somebody doing it, I mean, I've never done this, so I don't really know where it comes from, but they do say hurt people, right? Somebody did something to them to make them so insecure about where they're at that they have to say something mean that could affect somebody else. So obviously, simply put, don't do it. Don't do it. Before you do it, if you do you have a journal? Can you write it down? Can you get kind of checked by a friend if you want to leave a comment and give your opinion? Because, we do live in this world, the wild, wild west, where censorship online is a little bit like interesting and non-existent at the same time. People can say anything, and
I guess repurpose that energy in the space of like, maybe look from within. If you're in that space and you feel like, hey, we can all get triggered off something online.
Exactly.
The space in itself, we're all human. I guess it touches back to that point of redemption and understanding. If you feel like you're in that space, would you say it would be a good idea to maybe re-examining why you're in that space? Maybe needing someone to speak to. Maybe journal about it. Don't comment about it.
Or simply unfollow the person that made you upset.
Exactly.
Like, I think a lot of times we want this one answer of, oh, we're gonna cure this idea of trolls. It's not that, it's a mindset shift. It's, why am I releasing negative energy and projecting it onto somebody else who I don't even know? Why am I doing that, right? How can you maybe internalize that or release it somewhere else and say, okay, here's why it triggered me, I'm gonna unfollow them. That's what I need to do to maintain my mental health right now, to maintain my posture, to not break. Because when you're doing something negative, you're losing that posture that you have to hold. You're saying, I'm willing to compromise on my integrity, on who I am, and be mean because somebody made me upset, which is really just a reflection of how I'm doing. So how can you throw that back on yourself and say, okay, this person made me upset, I have to do some work. I'm going to sit down with my therapist and talk about it, right?
Exactly. Maybe am I okay moment.
Yeah.
Maybe you're asking yourself,
right,
because I'm choosing to do this, am I okay?
And then there's the other thing where it's like, is somebody leaving this comment on the creator side, the receiving side, that is in a way constructive, but maybe I'm taking it personally, right? Are they saying something about the work and they're like, you could do this better? Okay, I don't need to get upset about that. I could take that, I can own it, I can say, you know what? I made a mistake, or I did something not at my fullest potential. Here's how I'm going to redeem myself. Here's how I'm going to make my work better. Here's the next partner that I'm gonna do to provide you with what I lacked before, right? That's what it's all about. But if it's, some hater, some troll, there's nothing you can do about that. You just gotta delete, report, block, bye-bye.
Create boundaries.
Yeah, it's the boundary, exactly. And I mean, we should also talk about that word, boundary, because as an influencer, as a creator, as somebody who has a public life, I have to have a boundary with my phone. But you know what? My phone is on me. Now is actually one of the times where I don't have my phone on me at all times, where I'm not necessarily capturing every single sound by every single moment. And I think that I need to scale back and say, like, okay, why are you so addicted? And how can you be okay resting? And back to what we talked about before with breath work, that's something that calms me. Swimming, okay, I'm swimming. And really trying to focus myself on doing these unique tasks without my phone is really, really important for me to also maintain and show up as my best self online and in person.
Tell me what gives you hope.
What gives me hope is the way that people are starting to be more vulnerable, not only online, but in person.
Any final words, anything that you would say to young adults, everyone watching, the boomers, everyone, because you got to show them love too, to everyone. What would you like to say to everyone?
Yeah, well, I think as a member of Gen Z and a Gen Z thought leader in the advocacy space, I would say to always honor somebody else's feelings, especially if they're being vulnerable and they're talking about mental health. And maybe if you think they're sensitive, maybe that's the key indicator to look a little deeper, right? To say, is this something I'm triggered by or are they triggered by, right? And if they're triggered, how can I help them, right? Because like there's no need for all the drama of, oh, Gen Z is a snowflake, Gen Z is too sensitive, right? No. Maybe they need our help, right? How can we be supportive of our youth? How can we help them have a relationship with mental health where they can go to their teachers and say, you know what, I'm struggling. Can I have an extension and not feel shame? Yeah, we don't want that.
That's perfect.
Yeah.
Awesome,
Cool.
awesome. So, it was great meeting you. It was great speaking to you. You are awesome. I'll be following you on TikTok. I'll take some pointers. And yeah, it was outstanding.
Well, you're awesome. Thanks for having me. And I couldn't have a better interview partner to be here with, so thanks.
I try.